figured we'd just take maybe 5 minutes, or if it goes longer than that, that's perfectly fine, since there's only three of us, so we can go as long as we want. And yeah, feel free to interrupt or ask questions or anything you like, and I'll go first because it's my show. So.
Now you see how she is, right?
That's right. I love it. I love it.
Oh, I'm glad. Okay. Well, I thought I would tell the story about how we got into aviation marketing, which, a lot of people think, well, why would you restrict yourself to just one industry as opposed to just doing marketing for everybody? Right. But kind of how this got started is I started flight training myself in 2005 after meeting John here. And prior to that, I had never even been in a small plane, anything smaller than maybe a small commuter turboprop. But I got into flying, and the owner of the flight school that I was taking lessons from, and John and I kind of became really good friends during this time because we were spending a lot of time at the flight school. So that was a thing. And looks like Dave is joining us, so I'm going to actually just start over and just apologize.
I'm just going to grab my cup of tea.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds good. David, good to see you.
Yes, nice to see you as well.
Yeah. Angela just stepped out to get a cup of tea, and I was just telling the story of how I got started in aviation marketing. Everybody's telling their 5-minute story today about how they, either the origin of their company or how they saved the day, or anything you like. So.
All right. Well, I don't know that I've saved anyone's day, but I've always got lots of stories. Just ask my kids.
Oh yeah, you're always good for a story, and I was hoping you would come today because this is really, really up your alley. So that's cool. But yeah, we'll give Angela just a minute to come back, and then we'll start that over.
I don't want to hold you up. I can certainly hear you. I'm just going to return to my seat in 1 second.
No problem. That's cool. Yeah, and you heard this anyway. So, yeah. So anyway, the owner of the flight school and John and I became really good friends while I was in flight school. And this was my very first experience with private aviation. I've flown hundreds, thousands of miles, probably tens of thousands of miles as a commuter. I used to commute once a week and then once a month from Salt Lake City to San Francisco when I was working at Wells Fargo. But this was my first experience with a small plane. And I was like, in my late 30s, and it was, I was not the typical flight school student. And, we got to be really good friends with the owners of the flight school. But what they were doing for marketing was what they call radio remotes. And you might be familiar with these if you have seen, like, they come up with a radio station van and they have the big inflatable, in this case, it was a bull because it was Cable 93, which is the country station in Salt Lake City. And they do bounce houses and they sell hot dogs in the parking lot and they do all of these things. And the radio station is actually broadcasting remotely from the flight school, and they're talking about what's going on. They usually send one of the DJs on a discovery flight and they live broadcast the whole thing, and it's a really big to-do, right? So, you're thinking kind of State Fair meets advertising, right?
I love it.
Exactly. So it's a lot of fun. The problem with these radio remotes is that they were getting hundreds of people coming in the door of their flight school. And, some of whom were interested, some of whom were just there because they were fans of the radio station, some of whom wanted a $69, I think that's what they were doing, $69 discovery flight, which was just barely breaking even for the flight school. And that was the last they would ever see of them. Some people were just coming for the free hot dogs, And so, they were getting hundreds of people in the door, which was great. And some of them became customers. But they only did this about once or twice a year because it was so disruptive to their business. They couldn't really be doing lessons and, other things at that time because it was really disruptive. So they'd end up with maybe 30 people signing up at the time. They had 9 airplanes and they had 5 instructors. So you have a capacity problem for the first couple of weeks after they do one of these remotes. So, it was sales, and it was great sales, and it was great marketing, but it was really unsuited to the business model, which was, what would have been ideal for them is to have 2 or 3 customers show up every month, new customers that were flight school students, and have them go through on a quality basis, be able to spend the time with them, do all of the things that they wanted to do. So, we asked the owner, why are you doing it this way? Why are you doing these crazy radio remotes? They're expensive and they're disruptive and they're crazy and they don't really give you what you want. And they're like, well, that's because that's how flight schools advertise. That's just the way it's done. And anyway, at the time I was working for a large Fortune 50 bank, and my job was marketing, digital marketing, actually buying ads, creating videos, doing things to sell student loans and home loans and other kinds of things for this bank. And that's what I did. And it was a great business model. And I'm like, well, why don't you do this? And they're like, well, nobody does this for aviation. And the people that we've talked to about creating content, writing articles, doing videos, things like that, they don't know anything about aviation. And so then we're having to teach them all about our business and everything else. So, that's kind of how ABCI came to be, is somebody should be doing digital marketing for aviation companies. And at the time, nobody was. Now there's 4 companies that do it, and we are the best. So that's kind of where it came from. And, the whole intention is to kind of help aviation companies have these tools at their disposal so that they can control their budget, control the timing, control the results, and keep their hand on the throttle so that they're not just doing these massive ad spends and then backing off and having either feast or famine, which really doesn't do much for them. So now we have flight schools, MROs, FBOs, charter companies, software companies, brokers, and so on. And we're doing varying different kinds of digital marketing for them. So I get to do what I love for an industry that is so much more fun than finance. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm fast friends with you.
Great. Well, that's great. We're really happy that you're here, and I'm glad you can empathize. So
yes,
great.
Sure. So, want me to go, or
I can follow her up while you're thinking.
Oh,
whatever you like. Yeah, whoever wants to go next, feel free.
I can certainly go last, because I didn't know. Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Since she just told you how we started and the fact that she just barely got into aviation, one might think, and some do, oh, well, you don't have a very large record in aviation. Then I jump in and say that, well, yeah, but by that time I had about 25 years of flying in the military and helicopters by my choice. And the story I like to tell is, so that they understand that I'm really a pilot, is that at one point in time, I lived in Ohio, and I used to drive up to Michigan for the weekend to fly in the reserves. And so then I decided, you know what? I was a member of the Aero Club at one of the Air Force bases, and I'm just going to rent an airplane and fly up there. No problem. I mean, commercial, instrument rated, fixed wing, rotary wing, current. So I said, great. So I got out there, pre-flight, brand new airplane. Aero Club just got it. I think it was a Saratoga SP or something, a pre-track. We got in, took off, changed the departure control frequency, said, can't read your transponder. Oh, okay. Cancel IFR, set me back down, took it in the shop and said, I'll just drive. I said, no, we have another one. We'll stick it in there. Okay, so we put it in there. jumped back in the airplane, refiled, took off. They found the transponder, and I'm on my way. So I filed, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 feet, whatever the proper direction is where I was going. IFR between layers. Very nice, comfortable. You know, you got everything set up. You talk to people here and there and relax. And I noticed that the fuel gauges were sort of vibrating a little bit, and I thought, vibration. You know, I'd try to tweak the engine a little bit to get the vibration to go away. And the other thing that was strange is when I was trying to talk to somebody, they said the radio was garbled, so I'd switch radios. Worked just fine. And I did this all the way up there. Those things were happening, which should have been an indication that there was a problem. But brand new airplane, no problem, right? So it's getting dark, and I get up, and it's a non-precision approach into Grand Ledge, Michigan. So dock the approach control, clearing for the approach. I turned on final into the approach fix, reduced power, and everything's going great. So
And all of a sudden,
I dropped down to the minimum descent altitude and flying out my time. I hit the VOR fix, grabbed the radio microphone and said, approach. And when I said that word, when I clicked the microphone button, all the electrical power went away. Poof! So now I'm without electrical power. I'm in the clouds. And you say, uh-oh. You know, it's grab for the flashlight and got it out. And everything's cooking along fine. I just don't have any electrical power. I'm glad I already had the gear down, because that would have been fair.
right.
But so then I thought, okay. And I crossed the approach fix by time because there's no electrical power, so you can't tell by the VORs. And I didn't break out.
And you can't see.
And I can't see, right? I'm in the clouds.
Oh,
Now, typically, right, you would go missed approach, go to your alternate, which would have been Grand Ledge or Lansing, Michigan. Well, that's fine, except that I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't tune into VORs. I couldn't do anything. So, what are you gonna do? Well, in this case, I had flown this approach probably 100 to 200 times in a helicopter. I knew what was in front of me. I knew exactly what was going to happen when I crossed it, and all this happened in my brain really rapidly. So I said, well, let's go down to the 50 feet. And I didn't break out.
oh,
Much at a time. I said, well, I ain't going anywhere but down. So I went down to the 50 feet, got in the hole, went down below that, went ahead, landed. And what's interesting too is I'd been told where to park, and where I parked was like 2 miles away from the op shack. So I parked it, and it's snowing, right? And so then I had to hoof it back to the op shack. I got in there, and the guy says, "You just flying?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Control is just about to come unglued." He said, "You didn't talk to him." I said, "Well, the reason for that."
they're out looking for you in a big pile of rubble somewhere.
I lost all electrical power. And so I called him and explained the thing. Said, okay. Well, the end of the story is kind of interesting because the next day, sun's out, and I had one of the mechanics go out and take a look at my airplane and pop the cowling, and their alternator belt had shredded, but it was still running around the alternator just enough to keep the charge light from going out. Or the, you know, so it was showing about where it ought to. It just wasn't doing any good. So that we were operating on battery power. It's quite an interesting experience.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad I wasn't with you at that time.
Things like that, right? Only in jet.
Oh, I've had my share of interesting problems. You know, if you fly an airplane long enough,
Yep.
any airplane,
Yep.
you're going to be dealing with things, and that you hope that your training is going to help you deal with it. But I think in the years that I was flying and the planes that I flew, you know, you learn to do dead stick landings. You learn to do all that stuff. So it's it's nice, and I think when Paula was talking about her civilian training, and I had the I don't know, the luxury or the nightmare of I got enough civilian training so that I could solo. I was already going to be going to flight school when I finished college, but I wanted to have a little bit of experience. So I had a chance to fly solo in a little airplane, 5 or 6 times before I actually went to Navy flight school. But it was such a difference between the style of training and with the civilian, who was basically my friend, and I was sitting next to him, and he could reassure me when something was wrong, and the plane was very easy to fly, but he was not pressuring me, to get things done in a certain way, in a certain fashion. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to like flight school. I found that when you get to military flight school, you don't hop in an airplane the first day. There's a lot of stuff that you have to go through. I don't know what your experience was with the Air Force, but our intake there was a lot of academic stuff. There was physical stuff. Very little of the physical stuff could I ever relate to flying an airplane. It seemed like, well, you have to do this, and then you go fly the plane, but there didn't seem to be any connection between having to climb a 12-foot wall and go through an obstacle course and all these things. I mean, most of the really good pilots, I knew were not particularly adept at climbing walls or doing these other things, but for whatever reason, they justified it. We had to do this.
They're the military. They don't have to justify anything, right?
That's right. So we got through that. And then I just remember my first couple of flights in the airplane. Well, it was, the instructor would sit behind you, so you never saw him. The plane was bigger, it was louder, and it was in not very good condition. A lot of the stuff didn't work. But you didn't need, it was old things that they'd gotten, they've been flying these planes for, a good 15, 20 years, and they'd been using them. Some of them had come from aircraft carriers. They weren't, they had T-28s that they flew them in Vietnam. So we were getting kind of the lousy end of the stick. And so there was a lot of stuff that either wasn't installed, there were holes in the instrument panel, and when you're a new pilot, one of the biggest things that is a challenge is to ever look outside of the airplane. You're transfixed by all the dials going around, and so I was an instructor for a number of years, and that was always my biggest challenge, was to try to keep the young student from staying inside the airplane. It'd be like driving a car and just looking at the speedometer and so forth without looking at the road. But when you're new, you're fascinated by it, and so that's the way I was. I was not looking outside. But my civilian instructor, if I would make a mistake, it was always, "Oh, that's okay. We'll get it next time, or you're going to need to work on this." But when I made a mistake with my military instructor, he was a lot less patient. And I just remember one occasion where he was asking me where I was, and because I had my head inside the plane most of the time, I didn't know. So I thought, well, we're probably around, so he said, "What's that field below us?" And I kind of looked out real quickly. I couldn't see it. I was nervous. And so I set out some name of some field I knew, which was probably 50 miles from where we actually were. And I just remember he rolled us upside down and we flew inverted for about 10 seconds. He said, "Can you read the name on the airstrip down there?"
Oh, that's good.
So that's that was my introduction to naval aviation, flight instruction and so forth. And but I do think that learning to fly under that type of environment where it wasn't your friend in back, we used to think it was the voice of God coming in our helmets, and if something happened, the stick, we were flying with a stick, the stick would move. We weren't touching it, but the guy behind us had the stick. We couldn't see him, but it was like God had taken over the plane and was getting us out of trouble.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Right. And the first trainers that we had, they would always tell us, say, Pearl, this plane flies better than you do. So if you can't handle it, just let go. It'll fly smoother and better than you do. The people who made this plane are a lot smarter than you are. All this stuff, they didn't have any heartburn about being politically correct or making us trying to build up our self-esteem. But I do think that having gone through that, when I did encounter emergencies, you'd already suffered a lot worse.
That's right.
And so it made it a little bit, you could keep things in control, because usually the emergency wasn't as bad as having the guy screaming at you. Say, hey, I've got an engine failure, I've got a fire, I've got this stuff. Well, at least I don't have that jerk behind me, screaming in my ear and trying to get me upset. So I found that most of my emergency, looking back, they were scary. Yeah. But during the time, it was just like, step 1, step 2, step 3. I had my share of radio failure. I'd never had a total electrical failure. So my hat's off to you, John, for that one. I had, coming into a busy airport, in Los Angeles, and all of a sudden, all radios were gone. I'm on, short final, waiting for clearance to land, and all of a sudden have to go around, look for the green light in the tower and all that stuff. And then you were always worried about flight violations. Flying the bigger airplanes, flying in the areas we did. If you had a problem, there were all different types of airspaces and things. So, but again, I don't want to bore everybody. I've got, I know that John and I we could spend days talking about, there I was, and all.
That's right.
When all of a sudden, right.
But just as far as why I'm doing what I do, I think most of my life I've been trying. If I went through an experience and I didn't like it, I would try to do something to make it better for the next people. So when I went back to the training command as an instructor, my goal was to try not to be the jerk that or the jerks that had instructed me, to try to help them. And I felt very good about that. And then when I went into the law, I thought, geez, I wanted to specialize in aviation law, and it never seemed that we could really help the client, because by the time we got a case, the horse had been out of the barn for a couple of years. They'd already, whatever mistakes they were making, whatever problems they had, we couldn't fix the problem. We could only deal with the consequences. So I tried to work with clients as far as, how they did their maintenance records and all this stuff, so that looking forward, they wouldn't have these problems. Because a lot of times, whether they had done anything wrong or not, they had not followed an FAA procedure as far as maintaining certain records. They kept things way too long. And so, when there'd be a document request, they would give, everything, stuff that they didn't have to give, because they they didn't cull their records. There was only a requirement, I think at the time, they had to keep records back 7 years. Well, they may have had records back 25 years, and so they were giving the other side all kinds of reasons to investigate things. And so you give a plaintiff's attorney, any indication that there's a problem, even though it was before the time that they were supposed to, that the accident occurred, well, they could paint a real ugly picture of the client. And so I found a lot of help. A lot of my clients, were appreciative of, how were they supposed to do it?
Yeah.
In the Navy, admin was not a popular thing, and it was, and I think, most pilots are not good at that, or at least aviation business people. They're not good with those types of skills. They want to fly. They want to, use the wrench. They want to do kind of the active stuff, but they don't recognize that the FAA is simply going to assume that they can fly. But the FAA, like any lawsuit, is going to be based on, how they document things. Have they followed this procedure? And, if I had juries that were composed of all pilots, it would have been a wonderful thing. But, the last thing a plaintiff's attorney wanted was pilots on a jury. They wanted people who were afraid to fly. The mantra was, hey, if God meant you to fly, he would have given you wings. And unless, unless, Mr. I guess it was American Airlines, I think we had, Piper Aircraft, we had Beechcraft. I'm just thinking some of my defendants, but whoever the defendant, Pratt and Whitney. So their thought was, unless Mr. Pratt and Whitney can build an engine that will never fail, even if you don't put gas in it, even if you forgot to put oil out there, but, they should design an engine that can fly without gas, that can fly without, that's all the manufacturer's responsibility.
That's not unreasonable.
Right. I mean, it's like, hey, if it flies, it should be safe, and if anything happens, I mean, if you've got an idiot for a pilot, and most of the pilots I've represented, I don't know if I'd call them idiots, but, I think, John knows if the plane goes down, yeah, if the plane goes down, it's usually not the plane's fault. The plane did everything it could, but, if you're not smart enough to put gas in it, and I had a helicopter crash where the guy didn't put gas in it, and yes, he still should have been able to auto rotate down to a firm yet safe landing, but he didn't, and there was one death and one horrible injury. I had that. I had a guy who he thought he was lowering the flaps, but he turned on the auxiliary fuel boost pump with the engine-driven pump operating at the same time, and that puts too much gas in the engine, and it's almost like turning the engine off. And so, he lost the engine. He didn't fix the problem, and he crashed, killed 4 people.
Oh,
so,
man!
I mean, those are all things that you can't blame the manufacturer for it, but usually the guy who dies in a crash doesn't have the wherewithal, doesn't have the pocket. And so in aviation cases, it's all about finding, deep pocket clients that can pay the damages.
Always the manufacturer, right?
Yeah. And so, the mentality, at least in California, I think in many places, is that, we want the injured party to be made whole. And so there's the theory of joint and several liability, meaning if we can show that you're even 1% negligent, then you're gonna, and it doesn't matter, what the bill is, but 1% means that if the other people can't pay their proportionate share, well, Piper Aircraft, Beechcraft Aircraft, you're going to have to make up the difference.
Because you can, right?
That's right.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And so that's the world that we were fighting, and so we were trying to just trying to articulate that
Yeah.
to our clients and help them understand that, you know, good intentions and good business practices and all that stuff aren't going to overcome, you know, that mentality. So
Right. Well, Angela, I'm curious to hear your story as well.
Well, my story is interesting and like night and day between all of your stories. So I sort of fell in this, like, no pun intended, into aviation, and I'm very new to it. I am from higher education. I'm in the communications and marketing sector for a liberal arts college, and have been there, which happens to be my alma mater, and have been there for about 20 years, doing on the website, and have moved up to senior manager of digital content, or whatever they call me, to
Cool.
do a lot of, video oversight of the video production and filming and things like that. So you guys are gonna laugh. So I've never, I've only flown commercial flights, especially as a student from California to Atlanta, all those years. And so this is a faith. It's really a faith story, and I found aviation to be fascinating. And so I'll kind of make it, tie it in a neat little bow. But so my pastor at a church here in Atlanta is a pilot, and a commercially rated pilot, and but he got that pilot's license, years ago, and always infuses some of the messages at church with aviation. And he gets, as pilots do. I mean, he can tell a great story, and he can also relate things about aviation, to in a faith-based way, which is
all of his stories are about aviation.
No, they're about. I mean, he's also like an economist, so it's like kind of interesting. So you get a lot of background. So fast forward. I guess the best way to say this is that they were sort of given a mandate. Like the Lord really wanted our leaders, our pastor, to go to every one of the 50 states, okay, and to pray at the capitals of every one of the 50 states. To keep it simple. And they rented a charter aircraft to do this. They did maybe 4 states in one day.
Wow.
And right. And so they rented a charter aircraft. It was a citation, a smaller citation. And they did that. And he just started thinking, remember I said that, he's an economist by trade. He's like, this just doesn't make sense. We can do this ourselves.
Yeah.
We call ourselves a small, big church, right? It's just a small, it's really amazing. And I won't bore you guys with all the details, but so I guess he just asked me to help. I mean, because the research is my thing, and, marketing is my thing. So I began to, research all these various aircrafts. I don't know beans, I don't, anything about aviation.
Everybody, start somewhere.
Right. So I kind of get into, to it, and I'm researching, and I'm having time of my life, really, looking at different aircrafts, and we kind of settled on a Citation 7. It just happened to be that I had a client in my small business whose son is a top aviation mechanic, and he literally in less than an hour, he pretty much explained so much to me. And just from my notes, I was able to, we landed on a plane. There was citations there. He said, whatever you do, don't buy that plane. This is what he told us.
Okay.
So anyway, we go down to Texas, we fly into Texas, we look at the aircraft, and there was also Citation 3. Well, it was another woman who's, an amazing, aircraft acquisition person. She kind of was steering us to the 3. We loved it, went to negotiations, ended up going to locate a hangar in Peachtree City, just kind of connected with an amazing aviation, mechanic who runs his own shop, has done great work. Gulfstream sends their planes to him to figure out. I mean, it's just amazing. Remember, from just going from a citation and just meeting him, it was just perfect. there couldn't be a better story. So he goes down, he checks out the citation. He's like, for the age, it's great. I start going through the records. I laugh because I really think I scared her because I had learned so much from that young mechanic that I was asking, like, did it have his Doc 8? Did it have his Doc, but I know nothing, but except to look through these logbooks like very carefully. And I'm a journalist, so I'm beginning to ask questions. So I really think, I don't know what she thought, who she thought I was.
Good for you, though. That's so cool.
Right. And it just cracked me up because she was kind of like, as the pilots were talking the pilot talk and they were talking the things, she's kind of like, showing me like, to be honest, like, it was like, she was like, let's go bake cookies, really, is what she was. But I had learned all things. So I'm looking at all the log books and, I have like, I really stumped her on a couple of things. And it's just really the grace of God. But anyway, so that's how we started. so we were down there. We had made all the plans to purchase that aircraft and got, as it also turned out, we ended up securing a top aviation attorney, one who works with Chick-fil-A, works with two big companies, two major companies based in Atlanta, let's just say that. And I just got to go through all the contract negotiations. And anyway, that deal fell apart.
Oh, after all that.
After all of that, we did not know, that's why I say it's really a facer, that there was something better for us. Because literally, we had done everything. Every hoop you could basically, we had done. So, and I think, it probably shocks people, like, who's this church? They want to do what? I get it. So that fell through, only to know that in the hangar that we're of the aviation mechanic that we first engaged, that there was a Challenger sitting in the hangar all that time. And we actually sat in that Challenger and discussed, talked about all these things. Long story short, it was like the ram in the bush. We ended up buying the Challenger 601 extended range. It's beautiful. It was owned by a big company, a retail company in the States. They took excellent care of it. It's just amazing. It's an amazing story. So purchased it in December. They took their first, the next maybe 2 days, they took their first maiden voyage, if you will, to the first 4 states. This would be the second set of 4, because again, we're trying to do 50.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing ride. So I guess I just wanted to say that, from looking at Citation 3 to our little chubby Challenger, it's amazing. And now when we sit in, and in between that too, regarding marketing, as I kind of round out this story, is the ultimate goal is to have a global aircraft, because we rebuilt a hospital in Nigeria. We have churches in Kenya. So, while the Challenger can go fly internationally, there'll be a total of 4 planes. And so, so we were looking at a Gulfstream, but now when we get in the Gulfstream after being in our little chubby Challenger, we don't like it.
I love chubby Challengers. They're so cool because the cabin is so big for such a small plane.
Right, exactly. So, to us, it's like, and, our pastor's 6 feet tall and whatever. And we were, walking in Citation, and he's got to bend down and keep his legs up. And we're like, oh, gosh. So, and then, of course, I learned a lot about avionics and just looking at the different systems and Garmin, this and that. Again, I think the exciting part is that I knew I was just ignorance on fire. I don't know anything. And I kind of came into this very, this world of, we've gone to Florida. I bid on, I mentioned the Gulfstream because there was a G4 that was at an auction, and I bid on that. I I don't have money to buy a G4, but there is money, because, I'm just doing all of this, and I'm amazed because never 5 times what I thought about going into aviation. So anyway, so we have the Challenger, we have, we're doing that, and I'm still just easing into this marketing side because I'm passionate about it. I didn't know that I even could do it, to be honest. I'm learning, talking to pilots and helping to hire pilots, the left seat, right seat, So I may not get all the terms right, but I do know marketing.
Yep.
So anyway, I hope that you can see my passion for it. Or here, because I'm literally ignorance on fire. I know nothing, but he was like, you might want to get your private pilot's license. I think I don't know how pilots the level of faith you have to even fly that big thing and, protect people's lives is amazing to me. But I think just to understand. And so since then, like I said, the guy who manages our plane, he also is like a witness for FAA and certain things. So I'm just kind of learning it on side. So I hope that I'm sure you have some seasoned aviation marketers on your call. I'm not that person yet, but I will be. And it's just exciting to me that, in my, I'm at the midlife, stage now, so that I could learn something new like this is exciting. So I've always seen I don't know why I stumbled upon you on Facebook, but I always see your posts come through. And today we have the BART system, but I was looking at this other system because I think it's just has some elements that we like. And I was just like doing that training and then logging our flights for the next one at the end of May. And I saw your post come up. So anyway, that's me. That's
that's fantastic. Well, and we have a lot in common, actually. Coming into it later in life, whereas these guys have been flying since they were, or at least thinking about flying since they were kids, So I just think that's really cool, and I'm really happy that you're here. So that's neat.
I'm able to be. So, like I said, I don't know where I'll fit in the marketing world, but I'm definitely wanting to learn. So I look to you as one of the best. So we'll
Thank
see.
You. Yeah,
Thank you.
These guys, everybody that's involved with our company is just so, everybody comes in with a different story. And that's one of the things that I love about this. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is because, there are so many great stories of, how things happened and things like that. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's so cool that, sometimes a deal falls apart for a reason.
Right.
Right. Because it's kind of the balance between hustle, and then like, this is out of my hands.
Yeah. We're like,
whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. So that's cool.
But and this one little part I'll add is that, so literally we signed we're at the signing. It went beautifully. We ended up getting it from a company here in Atlanta, not having to transport it from Texas. Everything was just great. So we signed the contract literally at 3:15 one day. And at 3:18, the broker from the other plane calls us. Like, are you guys still interested? We're like, what? And
wow.
It was crazy because I could see my pastor's like hand in his, like, he's like, what did I just do? And then he's
man.
Oh, did I make a mistake? But I assured him, no. He's like, how did she? Is there some system that shows that, aircraft has been acquired? I'm like, it just happened that way.
It just happened that way. Well, these guys can tell you probably that, most deals do fall apart. It's very, 60-something% of aircraft sales disintegrate for one reason or another, and at one stage of the purchase or another. Is that right, John? You think?
That's typical.
About 60%, is that right?
Yeah. It was quite interesting, and for the lawyer on the team.
Yep. Well, congratulations. That's really cool. And I'm really glad you guys joined us. We usually do a pitch out, so that you can tell a little bit about you, about where to find you, and those kinds of things, just so that we end with a nice round podcast, and then of course I can link to your website, your LinkedIn profile, anything you like, just tell us who you are, what you do, who you help, and how people can find you. So we'll do me, John, Dave, And Angela, just in order, if that's all right, if that works. Okay. So I'm Paula Williams with AVCI. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services.
It's her company. I work for her. I do all the back end stuff and the occasional business consulting. She's all marketing.
Hi, I'm Dave Pearl. I'm at theflywriter.com. My job is to make your words take wing.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm Angela Wood. My company is Wonderfish Creative Solutions, and I am here to provide digital marketing consulting for those in the aviation field.
Fantastic. Can you say the name of the company one more time?
Sure. Wonderfish Creative Solutions.
Wonderfish. Got it. Okay, cool. Fantastic. And where can people find you?
I would say LinkedIn, my profile there, and be happy to respond to direct messages there. And as I build the company out, specifically targeted to aviation, you'll be able to find me online specifically.
Fantastic. And Dave, how will people find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as well. My website, theflywriter.com, I pretty much got it done. I just got my logo finished, so I'm just putting a few peaks and tweaks on it. I don't want to let it go out there until it's got everything on it that I want it to have. And so it's still under wraps. So LinkedIn is probably the best place at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your logo, so that'll be fun. It's been a long road.
Right. Yes. For someone who is not as computer capable and not very artistic, it's nice to have some people help me do it.
Well, that's why you need a team, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. This was great. And hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to be discussing this book. This is Marketing 4.0. This is Philip Kotler's book. So if you want to get it, I think it is available in audio, Audible, Kindle, actual physical paper, wherever fine books are sold. So, that's what we'll be. Yeah.
I would love to. I had to read so much when I was working on my master's in marketing from Kotler. So this will be great. I haven't read that one.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, you're very welcome to join us. It should be a lot of fun. And we'll see you 2 weeks from today, hopefully. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.